Welcome, everyone. Hello. Before we get started, I'd like to encourage you all to join the Zoom link that you'll see in the comments here on the Facebook chat. You will be asked to provide a name and an email to enter the virtual room. However, this will be the way that you can access Spanish and Arabic interpretation services, as well as American Sign Language. Please also note that you can only access interpretation when using Zoom on your desktop. When you are in the Zoom webinar, please click the globe icon. It's at the bottom of the screen and select your language. And please be sure if you speak English, please do select English. And now that we're at the top of the hour, I'd like to pass things over to Max Zaldivar to get us started. He's the IFES Americas Regional Director. And let's kick off the event with Max.
Thank you very much, Ashley. Good morning and welcome, everyone. We're thrilled to host today's conversation in celebration of the International Day of the World's Indigenous Peoples and International Youth Day. My name is Máximo Zaldivar, and I'm the Americas Regional Director here at IFES. I am from El Salvador, the smallest country in Southern America, and because of our limited geographic, indigenous people have not been as visible as in other neighboring countries. But I can assure you that they have been and continues to be a fundamental part of El Salvador's cultural, ethnic, and national identity. Over the years, I have had the privilege not only to study in college with classmates who later became leaders and important advocates for indigenous rights, reaching prestigious directive positions, for example, at the Indigenous Peoples Development Fund for Latin America, based in La Paz, Bolivia, but also to have been able to work with many indigenous people organizations in Guatemala, promoting their political rights and reaching out to communities so diverse in their languages with effective and targeted voter education efforts, as well as working with indigenous mediators on alternative dispute resolutions in the states of Hidalgo and Chiapas in Mexico. These experiences have been most enriching for me professionally, but also personally, by learning to respect and admire their cosmovision and traditions. IFES works to advance democracy for all, and does so by acknowledging that our partners and stakeholders have diverse identities that may impact political access. IFES values diversity and inclusion and uses an intersectional approach in its programming to support all people to participate in civic and political life. Today, global challenges such as climate change are disproportionately impacting indigenous peoples who are expressing their concerns and opinions through both formal and informal political participation, as has been the case recently in movements in Brazil and other places. Many indigenous youth face barriers to participation related to intergenerational effects of colonization and assimilation, and are placed in positions where they must choose between their culture and employment and education opportunities. However, indigenous peoples are increasingly being recognized for the resilience, creativity, and power of their political voice, such as in the recent elections in the United States, despite still existing barriers. The rights of indigenous peoples to participate in political life, if they so choose, is protected under the UN Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous Peoples, Article 18, and the ILO Convention 169, Article 6. These conventions, as well as the one on the rights of the child, promote the rights of indigenous children and youth, specifically in terms of improving their economic and social conditions, access to education without discrimination, and the right to be protected from violence, as well as access to media in their languages and the respect of their own culture and religion. These international commitments not only call on states to uphold these rights, but set a good practice example for ensuring free and informed consent of indigenous peoples on any matters that pertain to them. In this line of thought, IFES promotes access to rights for all people, which build democracies that deliver for all. I would like now to hand it over back to Ashley Law, IFES Youth Specialist, to introduce to today's amazing panelists, three dynamic young speakers from diverse parts of the world, Guatemala, Libya, and Nepal, who will share their unique perspective on the opportunities of Indigenous youth to participate in elections and decision-making processes. Thank you all for your attendance and participation, and please enjoy today's most important and significant panel. Thank you very much.
Thanks so much, Max. Really appreciate those opening remarks and providing some good context to today's discussion. Just for everyone's awareness, I'd like to note that this event will be recorded. So by participating, you are giving your consent to appear in IFES materials. For closed captions, please use the URL supplied in the chat box to stream text. You're more than welcome to open it in a separate browser window so that you can minimize it, reshape it, move it around to a place that's convenient for you. As Max said, we are thrilled to have 3 speakers with us today. I'd like to go ahead and introduce each one of them. First, we have Maria Floridalma Lopez Atz from Guatemala. She identifies as a Mayan Kachikal, an indigenous group in Guatemala, and is an activist for human rights, indigenous women's and indigenous youth rights. Maria studies legal and social sciences, law and notaries at the University of San Carlos de Guatemala. She belongs to the Council of Kachikal People and to the Platform of Indigenous Women. And Maria, since the age of 9, has been involved in training and empowerment processes in the Guatemalan Parliament for Children and Adolescents. She's also held the presidency for the same for several years. Maria has also been elected as one of the 200 UN gender youth activists worldwide. And in 2020, she was recognized as an outstanding woman by the United States Embassy in Guatemala. We're also joined by Huda Badrush Dahan, an advocate with a physical disability who's joining us from Libya. She is the president of her own NGO for persons with disabilities, founder of the Libyan Network for Democracy Development, and active in the Zuwara Women's Union and Municipality. Huda has also contributed an article on the rights of persons with disabilities to 2 drafts of the Libyan Constitution. And she's successfully advocated with legislature to ratify the UN Convention on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities in 2018. In 2012, Huda established her NGO, and as CEO, she's worked with several international organizations, attended international conferences, including representing the Amazigh regions at a regional conference in Tunisia in 2014. And we also have Rupika Shrestha. She joins us from Nepal. She lives in Bhaktapur district in Nepal and belongs to the Newar community. She is also a student at the National Law College studying English and economics and a freelance journalist. Rupika has participated in various workshop sessions with the Association of Youth Organizations in Nepal, which is one of our very active youth partners that IFES works with in Nepal. And Rupika has also co-led a training of a virtual workshop on hate speech with ION and IFES. So welcome all 3. We're so pleased to have you here today. To sort of, kick off the conversation, I'd like to ask all 3 of you the same question. What challenges do Indigenous youth face to participating in political life? And Maria, I'd like to start with you if you want to answer that question. And of course, we welcome your personal experiences and any stories you'd like to share as you answer this question.
Muchas gracias, Ashley.
Thank you so much, Ashley. Good morning to all. It is a great pleasure to be in this panel with you. Regarding the question, I believe that to be young is a challenge. In Guatemala, it's a greater challenge, politically speaking, beginning as being able to influence these spaces when you become a candidate, when you go to a decision-making position. Well, they judge us because we're young and they attach to us all the weaknesses that may exist, that we're not prepared, that we have no experience. And sometimes they use the youth as many do, because they want to include us, but they give us no position or decision making. So they want to appear as in favor of the youth, but they do not take us seriously. And I also want to speak about the placement as young women, indigenous people in political spaces.
Historically, the participation of women has been less listened to, and in the past in Guatemala, in the national elections in 2019, there were only 31 women in the Congress of the Republic, and this is only 19% of the total 160 representatives, and there were only 3 indigenous women, and none of them young, of course. The same thing happened with the mayors, women mayors. Out of 340 municipalities that exist in our country, there were no indigenous women. And of course, the youth participation to be a mayor was also not appropriate. So all these inequality gaps are very typical for women, for indigenous youth. And you cannot have sustainable human development in its whole sense of society, environment, and everything else without the participation of women and indigenous youth, indigenous women and youth.
Great, thank you so much, Maria. I think your point about some of these unfortunate norms that persist around age and youth participation are really important to consider. Rupika, what are some of the challenges that you've seen or that you've experienced as an Indigenous youth participating in political life?
So when it comes to the challenges faced by Indigenous youth to participate in political life, I would like to say that economical hardship is fundamental challenge, as Indigenous family are mostly engaged in farming, peasantry, and they are offered a migrant working. So because due to the high rate of unemployment and financial hardship, their focus is only on income generation rather than the political engagement. And further, there is a challenge that the indigenous groups are not recognized by the society due to their political structures, government, when it comes to representations into all the sectors. And similarly, there is a tendency of, ignoring the indigenous youth voice, which still exists in a society paramount to the indigenous youth. They take as the senior voice are always superior in compared to the voice of a youth. So due to these separations, the youth are not coming forward in which they have to in terms of voicing their opinion. The next challenge that I feel is there is lack of education and awareness about the right and responsibilities among the indigenous youth. Because of their laid back family structure, they are ignorant about the right in terms of their right and political participations, because they have tendency of following what they are told to follow rather than putting their independent opinion. So all the challenges that I have mentioned are even more compounded when it comes to the indigenous women and person with disability, because they face double discriminations, whether it be in terms of financial upliftment, education, representations, political and electoral participations, and many more. Thank you.
Great,
So
Rupika. Yes, thank you for bringing up all those challenges. All very important to consider, so we are inclusive of Indigenous youth in all processes. It seems like we've lost Huda from the connection, but we'll circle back to her when she gets back on. So let's move forward. Maria, I'd like to ask you a bit more about the work you lead with your peers on political participation. What are some of the proposals that have been put forward by young Indigenous activists in Guatemala?
Muy bien. Quiero compartir desde mi
Very
experiencia.
well. I would like to share from my experience, since I am part of the parliament in Guatemala. This is a space to train young and adolescent indigenous people so that when we're children and youth, we should already know something, and then those people can train others. And so this proposal to the parliament has had an effect at a national level in more than 18 of our departments or provinces. We have more than 160 young leaders in the country to be able to have their own Congress, and so that we have representation rather in Congress. And it is important to do this. I also would like to share another thing that we have done that was not just a proposal, it was actually became reality. In the past elections, I, at that time, could not vote because I was a minor, but I began to participate actively in as an observer of the elections. For us as Indigenous people to be an observer in our communities, because as we know, there are observers during the elections at an international level and even national. But when we are there, we speak our own indigenous language, then people feel more comfortable speaking to us, and they come to us and ask us for directions. And so it was in this manner that we were present during the elections, and it was very effective, so that youth such as myself, who could not vote yet, had our first experience being close to the process. And of course, to be able to make sure that the process is happening the way it should, democratically, correctly. Another proposal we have, and perhaps creating alliances, is parity and inclusion into the policies in the country, so that for the next elections, they will propose or have equal number of women and men on the ballot, so that we have a representative ballot.
Great, thank you for sharing that, Maria. Those are some excellent examples of, political participation. You also mentioned you're a member of the Platform for Indigenous Women, and I think we'd be interested to hear more about the vision of this group and how does this empower all young Indigenous people to participate in political life?
Excelente.
Excellent. As I was saying, I'm a member of the Platform of Indigenous Women, and one of our purposes is to develop a coordinating and communication organ with the different sectors in Guatemala, so that we can promote the collective and individual rights of Indigenous women. And at the same way, to strengthen all this and create alliances between the women and the different Indigenous groups, and have communication with the private sector, with NGOs, with civil society and government, and therefore augment awareness and acknowledgement of the powers and rights of Indigenous women and their inclusion, establishing rules and policies that will be approved by the government. And their special mission would be that by trying to interact strategically with key people in government, then they will decide to include women and Indigenous people in cultural, social, and all aspects of life, and therefore closing gaps and furthering inclusion. Also, the Indigenous people, have them be part of the decision making so that their rights will be more acknowledged.
Yeah, that's wonderful. I mean, the fact that this platform is bringing more awareness to Indigenous people's rights and really facilitating a space for their involvement in decision-making processes is wonderful to hear. Thank you, Maria. I think we're still trying to connect with Huda. So Rupika, I'd like to switch to you now to talk about something that I think a lot of marginalized communities face, which is hate speech, misinformation, and disinformation. So maybe you can talk about some of the sources or the types of misinformation and disinformation that you've seen used to really negatively target Indigenous peoples and especially Indigenous youth.
So yeah, so when it comes about the misinformation, disinformations, and hate speech, Indigenous peoples and marginalized peoples are, highly and easily targeted. So since I have already mentioned that Indigenous peoples and marginalized peoples are lagging behind in terms of education. So the privileged groups try to spread the misinformation, disinformations, and rumors as if thinking that they do not have their mind and they can be highly influenced. So even in the voting procedures, they just try to be diplomatic and try to grab the votes of those people easily, just thinking that they are they can get in, one can influence them easily, and they are easily persistable. Similarly, it was also a rumor that those Indigenous groups and the marginalized groups are the reasons behind the high spread of coronavirus here in Nepal during the COVID-19 pandemic. Similarly, there's furthermore cases that there is actually international treaty that a government should actually take a free prior informed consent for before implementing its new plans, programs, and progress, which includes the infrastructural development like building road, bridges, and it needs to be consulted with the Indigenous communities who are associated with those lands, because lands are the identity of Indigenous group. But there are instances that the government do not bother to take the free prior informed consent with the Indigenous peoples and try to cooperate with them. So when the Indigenous people actually try to be vocal about their rights, saying that it is our land and you need to have consent, our consent in regards to this developmental, they were a lot of misinformations and disinformations along with hate speech were spreaded, considering that Indigenous and marginalized people as anti-nationalists and anti-government, development, who do not like their country to develop. Furthermore, there are a lot of instances that the privileges, there is a reserve system given to the marginalized peoples, and they are rumored to be privileges given to them just because privileges to given them and anti-privilege given to the other groups. Furthermore, adding to this point, the Indigenous practices were even rumored and considered to be against a human right, despite knowing the fact that how democratic and how the practices that actually follows actually follows the rights of each and respecting the rights of each and every individual. So these are some of the misinformation, disinformation that is rumored so quickly in here in Nepal, targeting to the Indigenous peoples and marginalized people. Thank you.
Thank you, Rupika. I know it's difficult to handle disinformation and really the ripple effects that go through communities. With your experience in this space, I know you've participated in IFES trainings and even co-led one on combating misinformation and disinformation. What strategies have you learned and implemented that really work well to fight misinformation and disinformation?
So yes, I was actually a very one of the lucky person to have been equipped with the knowledge of misinformation, disinformation, and hate speech, and lucky enough to have a training provided by the IFES Nepal in collaboration with the youth associations, ION Nepal. So the training has actually equipped me with knowledge of separating or differentiating the news in a categorical means of authentic news, hate speech, misinformations and disinformations. So based on categorical means, they have actually, equipped in a knowledge of how am I going to combat with them. So they actually provided me, enough knowledge to go to the authentic site, because they said the knowledge that all the news are not authentic. So before taking any actions, you need to see and check. Before making any remarks, you need to go and check whether the news shares are authentic or not. If those news are not authentic, then you need to report them to the concerned authorities, who are taking concerned authorities. So, looking after this, so having been provided with this knowledge, I also got an opportunities to cascade the training to reach out to the young people like me. So I have also been able to educate my family members and friends that all informations provided in the social medias are not true. So if you came across any news that are not true, then you need to go to the concerned authorities. And there is also a cyber bureau in Nepal when you can actually report those news targeted by aiming misinformation, disinformation and hate speech to any particular thing, and you can actually take a legal actions against them. And you can also further report it to the Nepal Press Council, who is looking after all those medias here in Nepal. So, and now in this time, all my friends, families, and even me go for the authentic size. And before taking any remarks and check answers, we verify the information from the relevant sources. So in this way, IFES Nepal has actually helped me a lot in combating these issues.
Thank you so much, Rupika. It seems like you're really leading some excellent, movements in Nepal and spreading some skills and strategies to combat disinformation. Thank you for sharing all that. It looks like we do have Huda back. So I'd like to move over to Huda to really speak more about some civil society movements. Thinking about the Arab Spring Revolution and youth participation within that, how has that sort of improved or further challenged working with indigenous groups? And specifically as an Amazigh woman, what have you experienced?
I can't hear Huda.
Huda, can you hear us?
Yes, Nam.
Great.
Yes, I can hear you.
Yes.
Huda, would you like me to repeat the question or did you hear it?
Her voice is not clear.
I know, unfortunately, it seems like Huda is having some technical difficulties. Let's see. Well, perhaps we can, go back to Rupika and Maria, and hopefully Huda can join again. I think one thing that's sort of on everyone's mind as we're talking about this topic is, as we move forward with supporting, Indigenous youth political participation, what as development practitioners, what can we do better? What are some of the recommendations that you would offer to development practitioners or government leaders or folks in the private sector to really help create more meaningful spaces for political participation of Indigenous youth? And Maria, I'd like to ask you to start.
Muy bien.
Sí,
Quiero
claro.
dar
Yes, of course. I have some recommendations based on a document that we prepared this very same year Well, before the Mexican country equality forum, the Declaration for Latin America and the Caribbean through regarding generation and equality and regarding political participation and leadership, we made some recommendations of interest for states, and that includes to guarantee effective participation of girls, youth, indigenous youth in the process of design itself for implementation of public policy, establishing spaces for dialogue between the civil society and the government and the state, and also create transparency in the implementation of resources for political participation of women and indigenous youth, also decentralized spaces and the ways, the forms of participation, including population diversity, indigenous, Afro-descendant, LGBTI community, and to guarantee that political parties provide resources to the capacity building, training, education, so that young indigenous women can improve their skills in political participation with greater investment in political participation and the participation of women as candidates. Indigenous women also to update the internal mechanisms and legal framework for political youth and women's and elections institutions can identify and reduce the gaps that impact participation of women and indigenous youth negatively. And regarding philanthropy, to acknowledge and finance networks and movements that promote participation of indigenous youth, to continue investing in training and political empowerment of indigenous youth.
Those are great recommendations, Maria. Thank you for speaking to those.
Excelente.
Rupika, what about you? What are some recommendations that you might offer to development practitioners, government leaders, anyone when it comes to really facilitating a more meaningful space for Indigenous youth to politically participate?
Firstly, I'd like to thank you so much for this question, because we have been here pointing out the problems, but you have been provided us with showing out some of the solutions, which I actually very appreciate this sort of questions. So based on the options that the respected has provided, I would like to recommend the following things. So firstly, the government should come up with a targeted educational program for indigenous youth, especially residing in rural areas, because they are the ones who are actually deprived of the opportunities and educations. The government should further create employment opportunities to indigenous youth and introduce vocational and skill-based training program. They should also make accessible all kinds of information to the young people in their own local language, because it is the language that actually familiar with them. So they should, which will actually ensure the indigenous youth participations in politics, and they can also further encourage youth participations by through the developing laws and policies, along with the effective implementation familiar to the indigenous youth group. Secondly, the local government should also introduce specific plans, programs targeting indigenous youth for the electoral and political participation. And they can also create they can also create unique and locally tailored curriculum to assist the indigenous youth in gaining a deeper understanding of political structures and their participation. So thirdly, that I would like to recommend to the private sector that they should start the business targeting to the indigenous youth, and also provide them with the entrepreneurship skills, trainings, and opportunities to them. Lastly, civil societies has actually a great role, because they can actually collaborate with a more indigenous people and group organization and becomes their voice, since they have always been playing the role of being voiceless. So in this case also, they can be the voice of indigenous youth and indigenous group and preserve their cultures by uplifting them to the mainstreaming them in their strategic plans, goals, and aims in their further life. in the further tenure. So these are the recommendations that I would like to provide. Thank you.
Thank you, Rupika. Those are some excellent recommendations as well. We appreciate you sharing those. I know we are moving into the next session. I just want to thank you, Maria and Rupika, for sharing such wonderful insights and personal and powerful experiences. I want to turn it over to Rebecca Aberg, our Senior Inclusion Specialist, who supports IFAS's programming that is focused on disability rights and Indigenous people's rights. So Rebecca, over to you.
Why Senator Degek?
I think that Huda has been able to join us finally. So Ashley, I'll turn it back to Huda for a couple of minutes.
Yeah, Huda, can you hear us?
Yes, I can. Yes.
Why Senator Degek?
Yes, I can hear you.
Great, great. Well, we'd love to hear a bit about you know, your work with civil society movements and especially as it pertains to being an Amazigh woman in Libya.
Why?
Yes. Starting with the civil society work, since started, it was permitted after the change in Libya 9 years ago.
And of course, the way the local community looks at those groups is a key. Therefore,
the voice is not clear.
For the civil society, it's a
my
must
work in the civil society
to take
organizations
care
in my
of such
community
groups,
focused
to be their voice,
on youth from people with disabilities,
to help and support them as well.
My goal was to reach out to people that are confined with their homes with
at the
virtually
same
no
time,
skills appreciated in
they might
the job
hinder
market.
you from
I was reaching out to them so they can work
goals
to
set by
acquire
you.
skills
and
also
here
learn
we're talking
more
about the
about
role
the
of international
experiences
organizations and supporting
from
those
the international
groups.
community and learn about solutions that they can
I'm
apply in their
so
everyday
sorry to interrupt. I think we're having a little bit of a technical issue on our side. So I think we have two interpreters who are kindly interpreting at the same time. So could I ask that we have just one interpreter on the English channel? I'm so sorry, Huda, for interrupting.
Can you hear me well now?
Yes.
What? Okay. One of the things that I said earlier, that with this organization that after the change from 2011 that I'm able to create, I was able to reach out to the young men and women from our Indigenous community who happen to be with disabilities and confined within their homes without acquiring skills for job markets or even for their own well-being. And I created a space with this organization where they can meet on a weekly basis, an excuse for them to leave their beds and leave their homes, and also get introduced to their peers from the community. Also, it was a good occasion for them to learn about the existing legislations that can help them further ameliorate their status, whether that's work-wise or other or culturally. All these things, as simple as it may sound, with people that are confined in their homes, these are unreachable information for them before. Another thing, in the first elections that took place here, the first free elections that took place around here, because we were active, we reached out to the local authorities and to acquire the information. And we've been working as the linking point with people with disability. And we had several meetings and conferences in our community with young people with disability to show them how they can register, how they can vote, and also what are the most accessible polling stations that during that given elections. And I will continue to be active for me personally and for our organization to be active in the in election monitoring activities. And now we were member of a network nationwide that include Indigenous peoples and others. Another thing is now we're working on when it comes to the medical and other forms of assistance of people with disability, that here in our indigenous regions, we don't have branches of the Solidarity Fund when it comes to assistance of people with disability, but there are rather small offices that require permissions from the capital in every small aspect. And now we're working on changing this structure to allow the locals offices to take autonomous decisions when it comes to assisting people with disability in the community.
That's wonderful to hear. And I know, Huda, I know you were a very active participant. Huda, I know you were an active participant in IFES's Power to Persuade program in Libya, which supports women with disabilities to gain advocacy skills. Since completing that program, you had mentioned that you were working in the community to support education access for students and working with parents. I think we'd love to hear a bit more about what that work looks like and what your plans are.
One of the things that I learned from my trainings that I attended with IFES are that there are many aspects that some of them that I was not even aware that existed, or tricks and tips that I can use. And also, there are some skills that I have some background about, however, that they needed a lot of refine from this program, such as how I can reach to decision makers. How can I have one voice in a community? Also, how that I should to prepare my all demands and asks and arrange it in a logical manner with all the stakeholders that we are working together before reaching out to the authorities, so we will have clear vision and clear requests. Another thing that I can mention that I benefited from the workshop from this program is the importance of details and also propagations of those skills and pass it on to other members of my community. So I'm working at the moment on designing a program that I can reach out to people from my community to convey what I learned with you guys. I'm reaching a category of women and indigenous women with disabilities, starting from 16 years old up to the mid-20s or late 20s. So I work with youth, indigenous youth from the in general. However, I noticed that indigenous women and particularly indigenous women with disability are one of the most marginalized groups when it comes to indigenous people. So I want to further focus my work on indigenous young indigenous women with disabilities. And also, I will continue presenting the space of my organization as a safe space that those young women with disabilities that can come on regular basis and discuss and share ideas with their other members of the community.
That's wonderful to hear, Huda. Thank you so much for sharing more about your experience with the Power to Persuade program, and with the work that you are supporting now in your community with Indigenous youth with disabilities. I know we are getting a little bit close to time, so I do want to acknowledge that we recognize some of these great questions that have been asked in the chat, and I want to allow Rebecca to facilitate a little bit of that question and answer session. So thank you all again, Rupika, Huda, Maria, and I know Rebecca will keep engaging you with some of these questions. So over to you, Rebecca.
Thank you, Ashley. All of the panelists have shared such fascinating insights from your experiences, and I hope we can continue this rich discussion through the questions that have come in from the audience, which are really great ones. So first we have a question from the Chief Electoral Officer for Saskatchewan, which is a Canadian province where the Indigenous population makes up 15% of the population. And the question is, as an election management body, our goal is to reduce barriers, but particularly administrative barriers that prevent participation in electoral events. Have any of the speakers seen success in their country in programs that prepare Indigenous youth to participate in elections when they are old enough to vote? So would anyone be interested in answering this question? Yes, Maria.
Muy bien, de nuevamente quiero resaltar el trabajo.
Once again, I would like to point out that the work that we are doing as the electoral mission was a process of information, getting to know how political parties were formed, what they do, and then the young people that were going to vote, how they go about, where to go vote, what they have to do, how to register, how people are elected in percentages. That's the way our system is. And I think that that preparation, and of course point out that in this Indigenous mission, the greatest majority of participants were young women, Indigenous young women. So many Indigenous women were involved, very young women. There were some that were mothers, single mothers, and they were interested in learning more about the political side of that in the country. And it was there that the parliament allowed us then as youth to get to know the process better, since the election of the director council is done democratically. And the general elections are done as well. So what we do for youth and adolescent is that since they're young, they should learn how to use their citizen rights, how vote and others. So we begin teaching youngsters and adolescents so that when they become of age, they have a broader view of what it is they have to do and what the responsibilities are. So we have to bet on the Indigenous youth so that we have that equality of knowledge within the political system.
Thank you so much, Maria. Huda, I know that you also have your hand raised. Would you like to share your thoughts?
Yes, yes. The voice is not clear.
Huda, the signal's breaking up a little bit. Can we come back to you? Okay, we'll come back in a minute when the signal clears up a bit. We have another question that's come through the chat about the role of corruption. Would you address the role of corruption on the political participation of Indigenous youth in your countries? How, if at all, are Indigenous youth uniquely targeted or affected by corruption? In what ways does corruption deter or encourage the political participation of different groups of Indigenous youth? Would anyone like to answer this question about the role of corruption? Yes, Rupika, thank you.
So yeah, the corruption is actually not good because it actually takes the country behind, very, backward. So everyone knows this fact. So how corruption actually affect the participation of Indigenous group, I'd like to highlight some of the things that there becomes, if you give something, then only they are going to give you the opportunity. So there becomes a favoritism. So, the corrupted leaders and the corrupted people actually give opportunities to those youth who actually could do favoritism to them or who could actually give them something in return. So because of these things, those Indigenous group who are actually, capable of keeping their voice into the platform, they are not provided with the opportunity. Those who could actually give the corrupt people something in return are actually reached to the, either in the place of leadership, in the place of leadership. So the actual Indigenous voice are not reached to the platform where it actually has to be reached. So because of these things, the actual youth or the motivated youth are actually discouraged. So it has actually, in this way, the corruption has actually affected the Indigenous people. So which I just feel this, and this is all I want to say.
Thank you, Rupika. Huda, I think we have you back now on the line. Please share your thoughts.
Yes, I can. Yes, we can. Yes, I can hear you now. Can you hear me, guys?
Yes, we can hear you.
تمام.
All right. Oh, the voice is gone.
Okay, it sounds like we're hitting that technical snag again, but we'll come back again if we can get Huda on the line. Huda, I'm so sorry about that signal issue today. So for go ahead, Huda.
All right, now probably you can hear me better. I think I have a better signal.
Yes, it's great.
واي نحن بالنسبه لتلف الفساد مثلا قلت
concerning corruption in the elections in here in Libya, like whenever there is elections, there would be this issue of who we should select. One of the things that we worked on to avoid political corruption is to have political debates of the candidates to make sure that they will be exposed in front of the public in direct questions about their history and the works that they were doing. And people with disability, young people with disability, were active members within the last debate that took place in our community for our candidates. And we did prepared questions related to young Indigenous people with disabilities that asked directly push forward for the people, for the candidates. This includes the elections, the most recent elections, also the elections that took place in 2014. Also, this was an opportunity to take political promises, public political promises from candidates to reduce corruptions when it comes to certain works and certain works they need to do in the community. Also, some of the works we did as young Indigenous people with disability, that we were engaged the community with the efforts of monitoring all the previous elections that took place. This included issues related to finance, but also related to the respective people with disability within the polling stations.
دولوه نجي مرتين طبعا نجي في انتخابات المجالس البلدية نجي 2014.
The monitoring was what took place both in the national elections and from the local polling stations, but also in the local municipal elections as well.
Thank you so much, Huda, for sharing about that. It's really interesting to hear about all of that work that's being done. We are unfortunately coming to the end of our time. So to wrap us up, I'll take a moderator's prerogative and ask one last question that we can all take away and think about. And I'll ask maybe if any panelists who want to answer could do so in just about 30 seconds, which will be quite a challenge given the topic. So as many of us know, the recent UN report on climate change confirms that this is the existential threat that must be combated. IFES recently published a paper on climate change and displacement that highlighted how Indigenous peoples are both more likely to be impacted by climate change and have contributed to resource management, environmental conservation, and other unique solutions to address climate change issues. What are some of the challenges that are facing Indigenous communities related to climate change, and what are some of the ways that you've seen Indigenous youth combating these issues? Any takers? Maria?
Sí, muchas gracias por la palabra.
Thank you very much. I live in a community where even if we stand on the top of a mountain, we can see everything green. But to be able to continue seeing those beautiful landscapes, it's been a difficult process because there are communities, close communities, where we can see the difference in deforestation, where people have lost the right to their lands, where companies have gone in without consent. And as youth, and we join into collective actions as a community, we have to continue fighting for our lands when there is the threat of a mega project or some company that wants to develop, and our authorities are the leaders, and as youth, we get together to fight for this. The other point is to support initiatives that we have as a community. In my community, we have forbidden the use of plastics. So when we go shop for tortillas or bread or any food, we have to take our own bag or manner to take these back and not use plastic bags. These are small actions, but if the whole community does them, we're helping the community and we benefit from it. There are actions also for reforestation that we also promote. And I think that it is part of the process. Everything we do is like a little grain of sand to combat this great threat for the world, to the world.
Thank you so much, Maria. I think that's such a wonderful perspective to have, that we can all contribute to the solutions. Would any of the other speakers care to share some closing thoughts on this topic?
Why?
Yes, Huda, please go ahead.
Yes, I have something to say on this.
تغي المناخ وهاني تمشنين نلاف قطمورت أفا فيلل.
So the climate change for our affected my community, we're a coastal community in the Mediterranean. In the last few years, we started working on how to raise awareness of the climate change with the people with disability as well. With the help of other youth from the community, where they facilitated access of people with disability to the shores and the beaches of the community, so they learn more about how the effect of the climate change is taking place at the moment, with the effect on marine life, such as turtles and so on. And also we linked him to information from the from reputable international community that talks that defies the other unreal news that talks about how that questions the existence of climate change, and that is as this is real and we should prepare for it, and it's imminent. And this, of course, was across segments of the community. It included all segments of the indigenous community. Our organization was part of it. However, it included many others. And now we're and the last year we've been also reaching to the other Amazigh communities who are a bit higher than us. They live in mountains, so they're not affected with the rising seas as much, but they have also other aspects as well that we can share together as a one indigenous group. And so sharing information and is an essential part in fighting climate change in our indigenous community.
Thank you so much, Huda. And unfortunately, we're running out of time, but I think this is a great way to wrap up, thinking about how these different forms of participating in political life, such as advocacy, voting in elections, and taking actions in your community, are all great ways that Indigenous peoples and young Indigenous people are combating climate change right now. So thank you so much for that. Thank you to all of our speakers today, Maria, Rupika, Huda, and thank you so much as well to Max and Ashley for all of your work on this event, as well as the people who are behind the scenes that made this happen. Thank you to our interpreters for making sure that we could communicate with each other today. It's so appreciated. IFES is committed to ensuring that all people have a voice in political processes and can help to build democracies that deliver for all. We in this area have 2 internal working groups that work on youth engagement, civic education, and on anti-racism, minorities, and Indigenous people's rights. And those will continue to find new opportunities to ensure that we're doing what we can in these areas to support local partners in the important work that you're doing. So thank you again for that. If you would like to know more about IFES's work in this area, please feel free to check out our website, ifes.org. And of course, do reach out to Ashley or to me. We're most happy to be in touch with you. And our emails will be dropped into the chat. So they'll be there for you to access. Again, thank you all for your participation. Happy International Day of the World's Indigenous Peoples and happy International Youth Day. Goodbye.